Good morning, and welcome to another episode of History Makers. I'm Marguerite Higgins, your guide through a hot spot in a very cold war. On this day in history, the Berlin Airlift successfully ended after 323 tireless days. Before we meet our experts, we must first look at what led to the creation of Operation Vittles in the first place. In June 1948, tensions over ideology and economics between the Soviet Union and his former allies turned into a crisis in Berlin. In an attempt to help stabilize the currency and help Germany recover, Great Britain, the US, and France had created a new currency called the Deutschmark, replacing the very unstable Reichsmark. In response, the Soviet Union instituted its own currency in the eastern half of the country and East Berlin, called the Ostmark. At the same time, the Soviet Union closed all roads, railways, and canals into the city of Berlin. Here to tell us of the Allied response is Major General William Tunner.
Hello. General Curtis LeMay brought me here based on my co-ferrying command and hump operations during the war, which displayed my expertise in the art of transportation. With the main objective of Operation Vittles being to supply the citizens of West Berlin with food, fuel, and other supplies, I see the cargo plane as the most efficient and productive way to carry freight. Cargo planes were also chosen because they will not appear as a military threat as we enter the Soviet zone. We have elected to go with the C-47 Skytrains and the C-54 Skymasters. My team and I have developed 3 flight corridors through West Berlin. The central corridor is being used to depart Berlin, which creates a continuous loop for our pilots. Our pilots are the true heroes in this operation. They work non-stop 8-hour shifts. We got 3 air bases with aircraft taken off every 4 minutes, and in order for this operation to run smoothly, we need planes landing, unloading, and departing in under 25 minutes. We've also established mobile snack trucks delivering refreshments and weather updates to the pilots as their cargo is unloaded. My goal coming in was to increase tonnage in the safest way possible. This past Easter Sunday, my men delivered 12,941 tons of coal in 1,383 flights without a single accident. And even if the airlift is removed, we can keep pouring it in if we have to.
What an impressive example of teamwork. Thank you, Major General. And now let's meet one of the sweetest pilots of the airlift, First Lieutenant Gail Halverson.
Good morning. I'm First Lieutenant. You can see by my insignia and rank right here. First Lieutenant Gail S. Halverson, also known as the Candy Bomber or Uncle Chocolate. There was a bunch of different nicknames. Wiggle Wings was another one of them. And why am I sitting here? What does this have to do with the Berlin Airlift? Well, during this time period, I was over there in July 1949, I believe, July 17th, around then, if I recollect. And there was some kids behind a fence, and, they were curious, seeing an American pilot. And I went up to them and gave them some sticks of gum. They were appreciative of the gum, but I realized they hadn't had much American candy. So I told them, I was like, you be looking out for next time when I'm flying by. You'll know it's me because I'm wiggling the wings. So they kept their eyes out and they, were anticipating my return. So when I was flying by the next time, we were wiggling the wings and started dropping candy out. All sorts of different candy. Hard candies like this, pieces like that. But the biggest hit was chocolate. The good old American Hershey bar. Who doesn't love Hershey's? They would manufacture the little parachutes in Massachusetts, and they'd, tie the string on, thus so, and then they'd drop it, just like that. Now, the parachute would slow its descent, so it wouldn't be all broken up. Now, pieces weren't always fully intact. But throughout this whole operation, 3 tons of candy was dropped, and that was definitely brightening the day for a lot of those kids. The Air Force ended up giving me a medal for that. And it was overall such an important thing. The Berlin Airlift and the candy, it was just a way to bring joy to these people who had been trapped behind the wall. So yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed hearing about the candy bomber and Uncle Chocolate.
As far as bombing goes, I'll take Hershey bars every time. Thanks again, First Lieutenant. Now we turn to Germany's native son and esteemed photographer, Henry Ries.
Hi, I am Henry Ries, and I worked for the New York Times as a photographer. One of my most famous photos was of the Berlin Airlift and was later made into stamps. Can you believe that? Cool is that? I am really here to talk to you about what life was really like during this time. I was able to give the airlift perspective from the people on the ground in Berlin, including German volunteers working tirelessly around the clock. Life in West Berlin was extremely hard. Fuel and electricity were rationed and many relied on the black market for household goods. Much of the wealth had been taken back to Moscow. Rations were not big enough to maintain the population or heat their homes. Berliners were cutting down trees in public parks to have wood to heat their homes. Imagine that. And I was able to showcase this. My camera acted as a shield during some of the most difficult times. And I knew it was important to capture this so everyone around the world could see exactly what was happening. My role was amazing. Photographers were on the ground. They were there, and we were able to capture this moment of humanitarian effort. We saw children waiting outside the fences, cheering the planes on, feeling a sense of happiness, and it was amazing to be able to capture that. Volunteers were recruited in West Berlin to assist in loading and unloading cargo. Volunteers also received an extra ration. There was great pride in assisting with the airlift as a way to help their countrymen. Maintenance crews were also organized with former mechanics, an interpreter, and an American mechanics supervisor. This airlift was a lifeline for West Berlin. The Berlin airlifters faced several obstacles, natural and artificial, during the massive operation. Still, they supplemented the regular airlift by dropping candy attached to handkerchief parachutes to the children of Berlin, a practice which would be dubbed Operation Little Vittles. Such success stories reinforced Western support for the airlift and eventually reached beyond this Iron Curtain. The airlift saved the city without war. It exemplified the ability of the Western Allies to work together against a common enemy. And the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was born during the airlift. And I truly believe that through photography and through these photos, we were able to expose the need of West Berlin during this time.
What powerful imagery. Thanks again, Henri. And now we turn to world-renowned professor of history, Dr. Spangler, for a look at the lasting legacy of the Berlin Airlift.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Egon Spangler. You can tell by my old and tattered leather-bound books that I'm a professor of U.S. history. And we are here to talk about the legacy of the Berlin Airlift. This lift was a massive success for the United States and formally kicks off the Cold War between America and the Soviet Union. It saved over 2.5 million people without a single shot being fired and sped up the creation of the Berlin Wall. This event demonstrated the military need for air transport, not just for bombers and gunners, but for logistics. It created a more efficient ground control approach and air traffic control protocol, along with procedures for loading and unloading cargo. The airlift also led to the formation of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and forged friendships between Germany and established the Federal Republic of Germany. It convinced France and the rest of Europe that there was a new enemy, the Soviets and the communists, and that the Germans were no longer our foes. Thank you.
Impressive, Dr. Spangler. Always a pleasure to work with such an esteemed individual as yourself.
Look, it's the candy bar. Yay, I'm gonna eat this.
Thanks to all of our guests who joined us today. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on another edition of History Makers. Have a happy Monday, and as always, I'm your favorite war correspondent, Marguerite Higgins, signing off.
Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to round 4 of History Makers Madness. I just want to comment on how happy we are with the amount of people who are participating. The numbers are so high. And tell your friends if they're not doing this, they're really missing out. So let's start with Mr. Adams today. What is your pick?
Yeah, so I've been following along in the Explorer category, and now that we've gotten to the Elite 8, they've run into Abe Lincoln. So the Explorers, of course, if they had, maybe if they were Sea Explorers, they would have been using astrolabe against Honest Abe, but they're not. So, we can't really think about that very much. But, Lewis and Clark, exploring the area with the spruce. Now, can you really deduce who's going to win this matchup? Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I'm going to look at a pretty meaningful matchup this week between Albert Einstein and Adolf Hitler. Albert Einstein fled Nazi Germany and also was involved with the invention of the atom bomb. So there's a lot of connection between Einstein and Hitler in this matchup, and I'm interested to see who you choose to move on to the Final Four. Mr. Hargrove, who are you looking at?
Well, this week I'm going to look at the great conqueror in Alexander the Great versus the great pacifist in Martin Luther King Jr., who was part of the Southern Christian Leadership Council and the American Civil Rights Movement. Two very different guys in very different parts of the world doing what they do. And Mrs. Luce?
All right. I'm looking at Leonardo da Vinci versus Martin Luther. Both fathers of their generation, so Da Vinci being a great Renaissance thinker, creator, and Martin Luther being one to challenge the church and the established and kick off the Reformation. So this is the Renaissance versus the Reformation. Which one will come out on top?
All right. Let me just cut that out. Thank you all for your picks and the commentary. It's unbelievable how intelligent our social studies department is at Herman High School. I look forward to see who makes it into the Final Four.